Well, welcome once again to Calaveras Living. On today's program, we're going to talk about foster care and adoptions, and sometimes understand they go together, or sometimes go sequentially. And we're going to talk with Ronda Shoemaker, who's an adoptions social worker, and she knows whereof she speaks. And it's good to see you.
Thank you.
And you're working, actually, the full title of the agency you work for Calaveras County is what?
Calaveras Works and Human Services Agency. Works
and Human Services. What? So the works part is they also offer employment?
Employment services, correct.
Okay. Now the whole process of foster care and adoptions is now entirely a county operation, is that right?
Correct. We took it over from the state July 1st of 2012.
You took it over because you wanted to or you had to?
Well, you know, Governor Brown has done some realignment in the state of California. And
that's a good term, realignment.
Yes.
Sure it's not money saving.
Yes. So that's part of the realignment plan, is that adoptions is moving from the state to the counties.
Okay. Now you handle, and you do handle both. I mean, there are other adoption agencies around here that are all private, but this is the one that's government financed by who finances it?
Well, we get state, federal, and county funds.
Okay.
Basically, we have the children, and the adoption agencies provide families that get matched up with the children.
Okay, how do you locate the children, or how do they go about being found by you, or they come to you, or you hear about them?
Well, the kids that I work with are foster kids in this county, and not every child that's a foster child is freed for adoption. That happens through a process. Some children are returned home to their biological families, but the children that I work with are freed for adoption and do need permanency with families.
Okay, but how does a child get to be a foster child in the first place?
Well, sadly, they're removed from their biological families due to neglect or abuse.
By Child Protective Services?
By Child Protective Services, correct.
Okay. That's interesting. So you work closely with CPS?
I work very closely with CPS, yes. My office is just, a stone throw away from them.
And it's in San Andreas?
Correct. We are located in San Andreas. Okay.
Now, since July, have you dealt with quite a few, or just a handful of children, or quite a few?
Since July, we have finalized, I think, 4 adoptions since I've taken over, and we're about to do our 5th adoption next month. So
now, when you get to that point of a child being adopted, that goes through the courts?
It does. The judge has to sign off on the adoption, and the children are there and the families are there, and it's all legally done and filed in the courthouse.
Who represents all the people in court there, the parents and or the children?
There's no attorneys unless the families want an attorney present, so the parents represent themselves. And they're actually the ones that are finalizing the adoption. We're there in support and recommendation of the adoption.
You do go to court?
I do go to court, yes.
Are questions asked of you sometimes?
I file a report, so the judge does read the report prior to the court hearing. So if he has questions based on the report, then I'm there to answer them, yeah.
Well, that can does it get complex sometimes, or usually it's a simple process?
By that time, it's pretty simple. We're pretty much at a place where everything is set. Some of the complications happen earlier in the case, but by that time, no, there's not really any complications.
Now, let's start way back when a child becomes a foster child. Can be any age, from what to what?
Any age whatsoever. In fact, California has now decided that adults can be adopted as well. We call them non-minor dependents. So it can be from birth all the way up to age 20, I believe.
Oh, okay. I had heard, in fact, you and I talked prior to the show the other day, and I heard of a fellow who was 41 who was adopted, but I don't know what state that was. The states vary? from their regulations,
Yes,
right?
they do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, adult adoptions, I believe, can happen in California as well. And they go through, and they just go through the court. Yeah, they don't have to. I just deal with dependent children.
Okay, good. But just not to diverge too much, but if an adult wanted to be all that young person has to do, say a 19 or 20-year, has to go and petition that or make out some papers?
Yes, yes. And at that point, they can make the decision to be adopted, and they represent themselves in court.
Well, that's good. It's usually with people with whom
They've
that
been
child,
living.
Okay. Either as a foster child or just a dependent.
Yes.
Well, it's good that it's that simple. Things have, shall we say, in the adoption process, things have kind of loosened up. Years ago, an adoptive child of any age, or when he or she becomes an adult, wants to find their biological parents, they weren't permitted to. Now that has changed?
It's opened up a little bit. We do try to develop a history so that when the child does decide that they want to come back and find out about their biological family, that they're able to do that. The family that's adopting the child is also given some non-identifying information so that regarding their medical history and developmental history and all of that, so that there is information available for the family and the child. But we also want the adoptions to be as open as possible. There are siblings, there are grandparents, aunts and uncles, and we don't sometimes recommend that those ties be severed. And so we do ask adoptive parents to maintain those relationships because they are positive for the child.
Are most of the adoptive parents receptive to that?
It depends, case to case, of course. Some parents have a difficult time, obviously, with the children being freed for adoption, because that means that they're no longer able to parent their child. So it depends, but I have seen where parents have been supportive of adoptive parents, and it can be a very positive thing for the child. So it does depend case to case.
Well,
though.
it works both ways, probably for the adoptive parents and the biological parents. There's a certain tug there.
Sure,
Either
absolutely.
way.
Yes, unfortunately, for an adoption to occur, a family has to first get torn apart for another family to be put together. So, and we're sensitive to that.
Now, what are the requirements for a child to become a foster child, besides being taken away from their biological parents?
Well, they become dependents of Calaveras County out of necessity for their own safety.
Okay, where do they stay in the interim?
They stay in foster homes, and here in Calaveras County, Calaveras Works and Human Services Agency doesn't have licensed foster homes, so we rely on agencies to place our children. And here in Calaveras County, we use both environmental alternatives and California Foster Family Agency. So those are the agencies that we utilize to place our children in.
And that's just temporarily, though?
Often it is temporary, but sometimes those foster homes do become permanent homes for our children if those foster parents decide they want to adopt and the child is freed for adoption. So that has occurred.
Now, what are this can happen with a newborn baby?
Yes.
Or someone, as you say, on up to 20?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Where the baby is kept in an adoptive home or a foster home for a while?
Babies, adoptions go faster for children 3 and under. Typically, there's less time allowed for reunification. So that amount of time is typically around 6 months that is offered to the families to reunify with their children. Sometimes it does get extended up to a year.
Now, when you say reunify, if they're going to go back with their biological parents?
Yes.
Okay.
And so those do go faster, and there's a lot of pressure on the families to work their case plan to get their children back when the children are 3 and under.
Okay, and then who makes the final determination? No, the child cannot go back with his or her parents and will be open to foster care or adoption.
Recommendations are made by the the CPS social worker, but the judge has the final say.
Oh, okay, so so back to court.
Back to court, that's right.
Okay. Now, what are the requirements to become foster parents?
There's some training involved, and there's a background check, and you have to have, obviously, you have to have room in your home for children to be able to stay, appropriate living environment. They have to have a bed and a dresser and all of that.
The CPS people make that determination?
No, the foster care agencies certify the homes. They are licensed by the state of California to certify foster homes, so they're the ones that...
Those are private agencies? Okay, or you don't do that?
We do not.
Okay.
Calaveras does not currently have licensed foster homes. That may be different in the future, but currently we do not. So.
Okay, so the family has to be stable, have an income, have a proper place for the young person.
Absolutely.
And do most foster relationships usually work out? You hear about foster kids going from home to home. Is that rarely the case or frequently the case?
I would say it's somewhere in the middle of rarely and frequently.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just not a good match. Sometimes the children have higher needs than we were aware of. When children are taken into care by Child Protective Services, we don't always know what their needs are. And so sometimes we just have to kind of estimate and guess.
What would be an example of needs, higher needs?
Well, if a child's behavior is to a point where other children in the home are being put at risk, or if the parents feel that they aren't able to meet the child's needs, then sometimes we have to look for an additional placement. Okay.
Now, our adoptive parents, or foster, I should always start at go to the end rather than the beginning. Are foster parents paid, or they get some recompense for the care?
They do. They get a stipend. The state regulates the amount that foster parents get, and it is based on the age of the children. And also adoptive parents also have the ability to get aid to adoptive parents that's similar to the same amount that foster parents get.
Is that usually substantial or minimal?
You know, I would say that it's not substantial. You're certainly not going to get rich being a foster parent, but it's enough to be able to provide for the child, for clothing, for school supplies, for food, all of those things.
Now, you mentioned there's some training for foster parents and potentially adoptive parents, and you brought along a flyer here. It says Calaveras County Adoption Program Orientation. You're having 2 orientations?
We are. They are open to anyone that feels they may be interested in adopting a dependent child out of Calaveras County, and we invite them to come to our orientation.
Okay. Does that have to be a married couple?
No, you do not have to be married. You can be single, or you can be in a stable relationship but not married.
And who makes that determination of what's stable?
Oh, well, to become an adoptive parent, there's a lot of interviews and a background check, and we get to know you very well.
So you do the interviews?
So I do the interviews, correct.
That must be interesting.
It is interesting. I really do enjoy
a new reality show.
It is. I enjoy getting to know families. I've become pretty comfortable getting intrusive with people, and it is a fairly intrusive process.
You certainly have to ask some personal questions.
Yes.
Yeah. But it can be a married couple, older, younger, whatever.
Absolutely.
It could be a single man or woman. Could it be same-sex couples?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
It can be same-sex couples. We don't discriminate based on any of that. So,
You've seen some of those work out well?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, during the orientation, what are some of the things that will be covered to help the potential adoptive or foster care couples?
Well, we'll be talking about what the process looks like so that anyone that is interested will understand what they're getting themselves into. We'll go over a little bit about how kids become foster children and what the court process looks like, so they have an understanding about what that looks like, because oftentimes children get placed in adoptive homes before they're actually freed for adoption. There's a process in court where parental rights are terminated. And so when children are placed in adoptive homes, there's a bit of a risk there. The judge could decide that the children are returned to their natural families. So there is a bit of a risk, and families have to decide if they're able to manage that risk or not.
Do you get involved in those interviews of the biological parents wanting the child back and having to prove that they're now stable or responsible? Do you get involved in that?
I have spoken to some biological families, but for the most part, they are working with CPS on their case plan.
Okay.
But I do try to get some history from families so that if rights are severed and the children are not returned, that there is some history that we can provide to the child and the family when it's appropriate.
Okay. When the couple or the single person, whoever it is, decides they want to adopt, the whole adoption process, as you've seen it from July, how long does that normally take?
It takes a while. Adoption does not happen overnight, and it really shouldn't happen overnight. We want to make sure that it's an appropriate setting for the child and that there's an attachment. And so adoption can take anywhere from 18 months to 2.5 years.
Oh, that's
so
that long.
It can. It does take a while to do all the background check. We have to develop what's called a home study report on the family, and then the child's case has to go through the court system. So
is that costly for the adoptive parents?
It's not. The nice thing about adopting out of a county is that all fees are waived, and if there is any cost that is accrued, we do reimburse them. So
out of county funds or state funds?
Out of I believe it's county funds. Yes.
Wow,
so the cost is just really your time.
What would it be, if you know it offhand, what would it be if the persons had gone to a private agency and wanted to adopt? It would be rather costly?
It would be rather costly. It can be anywhere up to $10,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's lots of court fees, there's lawyer fees, and there's fees to develop and create the home study. So it can be very costly to go through a private agency.
Would the type of young people that might be placed through your agency be the same type of young people who would be with a private agency?
Oh yes.
I mean, could be
yes.
Wonderful kids either way, huh?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, kids are kids, you know.
Well, it's especially good that you're supplying, background though on
Yes.
on health or any mental or any problems that family members might have had or anything that might influence the child's behavior.
Absolutely. We want the adoptive parents to go into this with their eyes open, and we want to provide as much information as possible so that they are able to help the children if there are any problems that will arise.
Have the adoptive parents or parent, can they or he or she back out if they want after a period of time?
Yes. There have been those occasions that it's just not a match, or the child's needs are higher than the family feels they have to make. It's very heartbreaking for us when a child is placed in an adoptive setting and it doesn't work out. It's difficult for the child as well. They feel very abandoned and hurt, and it's hard for them to start all over again and even think about the possibility of being in another family setting.
How do you go about, or how does the county go about raising money to support a program of this nature, especially if they're paying out some money?
Yeah, we get state and federal funds, and so we have a budget just like any other program, and we work within that budget.
Okay, you do any fundraisers, or is that permissible?
We have not. No, we have not done any kind of fundraising at this point. I know that CPS does get donations for families, food and clothing and things like that they do utilize to help the kids and families. So,
have you had orientation programs like the ones that are coming up?
We have. We had an orientation back in I want to say October, November. We had a decent turnout, but unfortunately we didn't have enough people to do a class.
Okay.
So we weren't able to follow through with that. So I'm really hoping that at this time we do get enough people so that we can begin our Adopt Pride classes, which are required for families to go through if they want to be adoptive parents.
And how long a process is that? I mean, how many classes?
That is a total of 18 hours, I believe. No, I'm sorry, it's more than 18 hours. It's 30 hours. And we're doing it on 3 weekends, starting April 26th. And we're doing a combination of a Friday night and then a Saturday.
And who teaches those?
Christine McKeon, who I work with, she is our Adopt Pride trainer, but I will be at the classes as well.
Okay, so you can answer most all the questions.
Yes, and I'm sure that there will be questions.
Okay. Now, certainly at these orientation things, let me review the dates again. Saturday, April 8th from 10 o'clock until noon. And then on Tuesday, no, what's the, April 6th is the first one.
Is the first one, yeah.
Should put on my glasses. So April 6th is the first on Saturday from 10 until noon, and then Tuesday, April 8th from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. So those are both convenient. I mean, you can either hit the daytime or the
evening. And we understand that families work, so we tried to make it so that it's available to anyone.
Have you ever had to turn down people who want to adopt?
I think sometimes people want to adopt, but it's just not, it's not a good match or it's not the right time for them. So I wouldn't say that I've turned them down, but I've persuaded them to maybe wait until the time is right for them.
Is that usually they're either not mature enough or not financially secure enough or don't have the facilities, or what's usually the problem?
Well, and it could be any one of those, or it could just be a situation where expanding their family, it's just not a good time. Maybe they have things going on in their life and they can't give the amount of time that it takes to adopt a child out of foster care. So.
Okay, are most adoptive, when there is a couple, when it's a parents, do they usually, are they usually ones with already family members, kids in there, or are they sometimes just without children? We
have both. We have families who are starting over, who have raised their kids and are looking to adopt kids because they have no one in the home. And then we have other families who have no children, and there may be medical issues as to why they're not able to have children, and this is how they've decided to grow their family. So we have all kinds of families that do that.
And you're dealing with these people just day in and day out, week in and week out. But have you had some tremendous success stories?
We have wonderful success stories, absolutely. When we go to court and finalize everything, that's a wonderful day for everyone. And the children get very excited about it. It's kind of boring being in court, but we try to make it as exciting as possible and try to help the kids to understand what it means when we sign all the paperwork that this is your forever family.
That's good. Of the children you've dealt with in the time that you've been with the agency, what's kind of the average age?
Most of the adoptions that I've done recently have been for younger kids, 5 and under.
5 and under.
Yeah.
Okay. That's where the most success usually occurs too?
Well, I obviously people want to adopt children who are younger, but we've had adoptions. The state has done adoptions in this county for older kids as well. So,
how many children do you have now that want to be adopted, but there are no adoptive parents for them?
I have a couple of kids that I'm looking to match with families, and they do happen to be older kids. And some, when as kids get older, sometimes adoption becomes a very complicated thing for them. Yeah. And sometimes they're not ready to enter into the idea of an adoptive home. So I like to allow kids to have time, because we have severed their relationship with their parents, and they need time to grieve that.
Do they sometimes not understand why that relationship has been severed?
It is difficult for them to understand, and there's a lot of anger and grief around that, and loss, and those are some of the things that we talk about in our Adopt Pride classes, is that when you are adopting a child, you have to be sensitive to the fact that there is some grief and loss going on for the children who have lost their families.
Well, have you ever had to separate brothers and sisters or siblings?
That does happen. We try not to do. I have to say Calaveras County is very good about keeping siblings together, and I've even seen larger groups of siblings stay together. So, but that has happened in the foster care system, sure.
Now, you brought along some statistics for January. How many young people have you dealt with just a couple months ago? Well,
for January, the total amount of kids in this county that were placed out of home were 89. And that number does fluctuate from month to month.
And you and one other person are doing all of that?
Well, no, I don't work for CPS. I work for the adoption program, but those are kids that are placed in foster homes.
They go through you, though, right?
No, I'm more at the other end. When they first get into foster care, they don't get referred to my program until they've been in foster care a little while.
Okay, good. Now, let me review once again. The two orientation things are coming up April 6th, April 8th, and the phone number, let's see, maybe we could put that up again if people wanted to call you. It's 754-2847, right? Mm-hmm. And you could give them information. Where is that going to be held?
That's going to be held at Calaveras Works and Human Services Agency, and the address is 509 East St. Charles Street here in San Andreas.
Okay, good. Now, just in closing, is there anything important that people out there would help them, especially if they were thinking of thinking of adopting? Anything that we missed?
No, I would just encourage them to give me a call and come to our orientation and get the information, because there are children in this county who do need permanent homes.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of sad when you see the ads on television. You say,
yeah, it is. But there's lots of happy endings for our kids. We try to focus on that.
Oh, that's good. How long have you been doing this type of work?
I've been working with dependent kids for a very long time. I was 20 when I started working with kids in foster care, and I very much enjoy working with this population, and it's very dear to my heart. I'm very new to adoption, but they're the same kids, and we all fall in love with the kids, and I have two of my own, and so I can't bring any home, but I certainly do enjoy working with them.
Well, that's good. Well, maybe we'll adopt you here.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. But you'd have to check on our background.
Yes, that's right.
We're a little shady. But anyway, good. Rhonda, thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Giving us a lot of information, a lot of things I'm sure, I didn't know, and I'm sure people out there didn't. But we'll see you next time on Calaveras Living. Thanks a lot.